What is up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets'd podcast, episode number 167. This is going to be the last episode before we are at spring training, before we have spring training games, I believe, as well. I think this will probably be the last one that comes out. And the boys are going to be down at spring training in Port St. Lucie. So if you see us, make sure you come say hello. We'll talk about that a little more in a second here. We also have a great interview with Jeffrey Bellone, head of Mets Fix. He created a Mets newsletter. We talked to him about the newsletter as well as what the Mets are looking like in the upcoming season. And a lot of fun Mets conversation here. It's baseball season. We're super excited to bring you this episode. Make sure you're following us on all our social media at Mets'd on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. If you're looking for the YouTube video, go subscribe to the New York Mets channel. You'll be able to see it there. And if you're listening to us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, whatever it is, download the podcast, subscribe, drop us a rating, drop us a review. We'd love to see them. James, how you been, man? What's going on?
Been good, same old. Also, if anybody's listening on Spotify and you take a little look at the Mets'd logo, you might notice something different. Yeah. A little touch up, a little crisper colors here. The boys are going big league for 2023. Let us know if you like it, in the comments, Twitter, or just give another 5-star review on Spotify because you know how much we love those.
It's that official New York Mets podcast. Now it looks like, a real logo is made, not one that I got from Fiverr for like $5 when we first started this thing, which, by the way, what a great logo that was. RIP to that logo. But the new one, it's clean. It's a really, really good look. And hopefully we can make some merch and stuff out of it too. It'd look great on a t-shirt.
We'll definitely get some more stickers sometime soon. If anybody has the original Mets'd stickers, you guys will always know you were special. You were the day ones. You were the homies. Now we're really getting big time here. The new logo stickers will be cool. But man, I'm excited to go to spring training.
We're ready to roll. Excited to go down to Port St. Lucie. Never been to Mets spring training. I've done every team in Arizona. I've done most of the teams in Florida. Weirdly have not been to Port St. Lucie. Very excited. Not just to, go see some baseball, but the fact that we're going to be a little bit behind the scenes, talking to some players and getting some interviews and just watching them work out. Like that to me is as a baseball nut, as a guy who's a coach baseball, can't wait to see what it looks like.
And I'm also just excited to just be there. We're kind of going to be a part of it. Last year was kind of a new experience for us to have our field passes, be able to watch batting practice, hang out in the media cafe. And now we're just going to be more, all the more normal. Or the podcasting guys are here. That's just kind of part of the whole identity now, which is amazing just for the two of us. And also great weather. We're going to be able to go to the beach. We're going to be hanging out with our friends, John and Vito. It's going to be an awesome time.
Can't wait to see 80-degree weather. The sun glisten on my skin. I can't wait to get burnt. I'm so excited. I think we're missing one of the last cold weekends possibly as well. Maybe in New York. It doesn't look great for you guys if you're in the area right now. It looks like it's going to be cold and maybe a little bit wet, but it should be nice and sunny down in Port St. Lucie, which I can't wait.
Yeah, this is gonna be a great time. I can't believe neither of us have ever been to spring training. As big of Mets fans as we are, and how big of Mets fans our family are, how the hell have we never gotten there?
I can give you reasons. You ready for this?
Yeah.
So at least for me, March, everything that's going on in March and February, that was me getting ready for high school baseball or club baseball or whatever it was. Couldn't really miss those. And then when you got to college, March, February, you have your spring break. You're probably going somewhere with all your friends, and with all due respect to Port St. Lucie, I don't think that's necessarily a hot spot for a bunch of 20-year-old guys to go hang out, on their spring break. And two, I just feel like you're just in the thick of college, and we've had the weird spring trainings the last few years as well. There really hasn't been an opportunity.
It's actually funny you say that because my buddy Reed, who I brought up in this show a few times, he used to listen to us, but doesn't anymore since we went Hollywood. He actually one time linked up with either one or a few of his friends from his hometown, and they actually did go to Florida spring training. And he was mentioning, I don't think he was at the Mets facility, but he did, I think, stop by the Mets for a little bit. It was 2016-ish, 2017, not important. But I remember he told me one crazy story about just sitting at a spring training and talking with this just older gentleman for an hour, 2 hours, most of a spring training game. And he said eventually they got to names introducing themselves, and he was sitting next to Taylor Swift's dad watching baseball for an entire day.
Whoa.
Isn't that insane? Literally.
How have you not told me this story before? That's insane.
I don't know. It just never came up, I guess. But yeah, he just sat there, just had an entire day's worth of conversations with Mr. Swift, which is what a great prefix and name that is, Mr. Swift.
Mr. Swift. Yeah, that's a clean name right there. I'm really excited too because it's going to feel like baseball season, I feel like, is officially starting. You're going to hear the crack of the bat, the clacking of the cleats.
How many straight episodes is Mark going to say that this is the time? I'm really excited. Baseball's officially starting. I think it's 6 in a row.
What are you not a baseball fan? You don't feel like the season's getting started?
No, I love it, but you can't say it every single time. Now baseball's officially begun. 6 episodes in a row.
I'll say it until opening day that baseball has officially started. And it has. I'm just so excited. I'm super excited. I'm also hoping we see some of you guys down there as well in Port St. Lucie. I know the Mets fans travel very well, especially to Port St. Lucie. So if you're down there, you see us, come say what's up. We'd love to talk to you. Maybe James has a sticker or two. I don't know. He's a sticker keeper here.
I do actually recently found a couple legacy stickers that I had given to my sister, and they were just still on her dresser back in New Jersey. So I just grabbed them all back. So I will remember right after we get off with the mics here, I'm going to put first thing I'm going to put in my bag.
Yeah, so we'll be down there. The 7 line's going to be down there as well. You guys know we're really close and friendly with Darren, who runs the 7 line. They're awesome. I think they're having like a pre-opening day for spring training party at like Hop Life Brewery, I believe it's called, in Port St. Lucie at like 5 o'clock. So we'll be there as well, having some fun, and you'll see them on Saturday. I'm sure they're going to be tailgating, having a good time. If you guys have an opportunity to talk to Darren, do anything with the 7 line, you should. It's a ton of fun. Probably one of the most fun experiences I've ever had was going to a game with them. So excited to see them down there. And I feel like it's kind of just time for us to get into the interview with Jeff and talk more Mets baseball for you guys. So here's that interview. Hope you enjoy it. Get up, get up, get up.
JB, otherwise known as Jeff Bellone, the author, creator, founder of the very popular newsletter Mets'd. You can also find him at Mets'd.com and I believe on Substack. So first of all, JB, Jeff, how's it going, man?
Yeah, it's going good. Excited for baseball to be back and excited to be here with you guys.
Yeah, baseball almost is back. We've been keeping track of Mets'd for the last couple of weeks now, and now we're back at spring training. So there's been some great content there you've had in there. What do you think? What's the new storyline you're most looking forward to coming into the Mets this spring?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the position battles that stick out, whether it's, at DH or, figuring out what they end up doing with third base, even though I don't think it's as much of a question as people think. Obviously injuries could happen that changes things. But I guess for me, it's not so much spring. And I guess this tells you how this Mets team is different than others we followed over the years. It's about finally just getting into the season and seeing what this team can do. The roster is pretty similar. Obviously, they made some splashy addition in a rotation. But it's like the curse of being a good team is now the things you used to get excited about in the spring about, who's going to win this spot matters less now because it's about, what are the main guys going to do when the season starts.
No, 100%. I mean, the Mets, we've talked about it a lot on this podcast. The expectations are super high. We think it's a really good team. Everything is, leading towards hopefully a World Series championship at the end of the year. And what's really nice too is that our owner, Steve Cohen, seems to be completely all in. I think I saw in your newsletter today, like a bunch of quotes from him. And basically he said, yeah, when I'm all in, I'm all in. Like I'm going for it. And that's what we're doing with the Mets here, which I feel like you got to love to hear as a Mets fan.
No, absolutely. I was out, my kids had the, days off this week and I didn't hear Cohen's quotes live, but my dad texted me and it's just, we have the best owner in sports, and it's just because when you hear him say that stuff, it's hard not to get excited. I think what, you're talking about like what's interesting, what's exciting, but what's interesting to me is how does that possibly change, right? Because right now, let's face it, Cohen can't do anything wrong. Everything is great. We're all feeling good. I think like Cohen said, having good vibes going into the season. But now there's expectations. And with expectations, obviously that sets you up for potential disappointment. So I think it'll be interesting to see how the fans react, right, to this season. Like, are people expecting they're going to go out and win 101 again? That could be tough. But also even how does Cohen react, right? Like how right now it's easy because we haven't played any meaningful games yet. But what happens if they start, 10-15 or something like that? I think that's going to be what's most interesting to see.
I love how you preface that that sentence with, my dad texted me these quotes, because I feel like that's kind of the same thing that like Mark and I go through, and I'm sure a lot of other people listening to this podcast is like, yeah, I missed that. I was busy that day. Oh, good. My dad texted me the newest Mets information. But there were some other quotes that you had in the fix yesterday. I guess it was today. Yeah, it was today, 21st, from Cohen, that I think like really have like show the starkest difference between this ownership and the last ownership, where they basically said they're expecting to lose a couple $100 million of foods from the team this year. And he's like,
right.
Yeah. Cost of doing business. Like, what else can we do about it,
Yeah, no, it's unreal where it felt like before, previous ownership, you're pinching pennies, like any little savings that you could find. And, there's some teams, where they're even manipulating guys on split contracts. You get paid different if they're in the majors versus the minors, and they're even counting the number of days, people are up based on that. So yeah, again, it's just amazing that the Mets are in this position. I think, as I keep coming back to it, it sort of changes your perspective as a fan. We're not used to this, but I think we'll gladly take it, right?
How has the Mets' success, new ownership, I mean, they're super involved in something, it seems like every single day, affected what you do with Mets Fix? And you can also explain a little bit more maybe to the people as well, like what exactly it is.
Yeah, and I think all content creators can relate to this, or even, whether it's beat writers, bloggers, or people who just comment on Twitter. I mean, with the Mets now, there's something to talk about every single day. So I started this newsletter coming out of the pandemic, ironic enough, and you weren't sure quite yet at that time, like how things were going to go. But it's really made it where the Mets are an easy team to do this with, because even, during the off season, they're a top story, right? Like every single day, because we try to write, even in the off season, and, you could have been a team that maybe you signed that one free agent and then that's it. Where with the Mets, it's literally every free agent that is possible. It's, or I should say every free agent it's possible the Mets could be in on, right? Even recently with Zach Britton, right? He has a showcase. Well, of course, the Mets are one of the teams that are there. So I think it's been helpful because it creates a lot of content, and obviously it heightens people's interest. So, the timing, selfishly for the newsletter, it has been perfect.
Hey, listen, we've had some good timing with it too. The Mets started to get good. We got the podcast. Now we're with the team. There's nothing wrong with taking advantage of a good situation here as well.
Yes, right.
And also, literally, we started it like a year out of the pandemic, like right before the 2021 season. So I'm sure that was kind of similar timing as when you started this, huh? Was it?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing too is then we had the lockout, right? So it was like we finally get through all the stuff with the pandemic, and now it's okay. There's a whole off season of literal darkness because of the lockout. So it's been really nice this off season to have it where they're actually playing. It's actually normal. But then also the Mets being very active. I guess it was rewarding for all of us who were doing it through those cold days.
In the Mets Fix, I'm like, we've been looking at them and like they're very dense, but not overwhelming. How do you like decide what should go in there and what shouldn't? Because I mean, there's so much stuff, and yet I want to read all of it. I'm not like, I don't need to hear about this.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, no. And I think that's sort of the balance we're trying to keep, right? Where it's like, on the one hand, we have a lot of, I'll say casual fans who subscribe, who, they're busy with their everyday lives. And they're just like, give me something that just tells me the main things that happen, So for them, the way we start the newsletter for people who haven't read it is we give sort of a rundown of all the top news, but not just a rundown where it's just like a one sentence thing. Try to add some context. So that's how we create that balance where it's not too dense, but then we also add like an in-depth analysis piece. So that's where if you want to go deeper, we'll dive into whether it's the advanced metrics, whether it's even some like video review on, change of swings or mechanics by a pitcher. So we try to kind of offer both. So depending on what you're looking for, it's there for you.
It's also just funny to think about the fact that if this was another team, even in professional sports, like if this was the Kansas City Royals newsletter, or if this was even the Denver Broncos newsletter, you can't even imagine to be able to get this dense of meaningful information on a daily basis. And also just how well put together it is for you. Is this your first foray into a newsletter, or do you have others that you write?
So it actually started with the Knicks. So the first thing I did was called Knicks Film School. And that was it started as a Twitter account, right, where we'd break down video of different players. And Frank Ntilikina was, again, dark. We were talking about dark times. It was dark times with the Knicks. So, he was a good defensive player and the type of player that you couldn't necessarily see in real time how he was contributing. So we would make like videos to break down the little things he was doing. And then that just kept growing. And then my partner, Jonathan Macri and Andrew Claudio and some others, they've sort of just taken that and run with it with the newsletter as well. And then similar to the Mets, like we're talking about, the Knicks, it's like there's always something there, right? There's always something to talk about. So they're, I guess, two unique teams that, you know, they're always going to be on the top of the conversation. We've also done it for the Islanders. So Joe Buono writes that newsletter. It's called Isles Fix. You know, ironically, there's been a lot going on with them lately too, with the new arena and recently with the big trade. So we have done it with other teams, and you know, the Mets was really an extension off the original Knicks concept.
Me and James, you know, content creators. I'm full-time. James does it as well. How did you get this thing off the ground? Because the way we come from is like from making YouTube videos or writing articles for like a bigger publication. How did you really get Mets Fix out to the people?
Yeah, no, it was mostly just organic or entirely organic, where, you know, we had a Twitter account. I mean, luckily with Knicks Film School, you know, we had some crossover there. So that's really where it started, just from popularity from Knicks Film School and saying, okay, we're going to do this now for the Mets. People are joking, I guess, you know, I only do blue and orange teams with the Knicks, Mets, and Islanders. But it was on social, and then we got lucky a little bit along the way. Gary Cohen mentioned it on one of the telecasts one night. Howie Rose randomly tweeted it out. So, you know, we got lucky with things like that. But really, it's just been through old-fashioned word of mouth and social media, I guess.
What was your reaction when Gary shouted you out? I mean, were you watching it live? Like, how does that feel?
Yeah, it's funny. So I'm trying to remember, I was watching the game, but a lot of times when I'm watching, I'll have the volume like halfway because I'll start drafting the newsletter. So if I want to like think at all clearly, I try to have the sound down because I might also have like one of my kids in the background. But yeah, it's like all of a sudden my phone starts blowing up with people texting me. And then so because I did have it on, I used the DVR to go back to actually like hear it. But yeah, it was just crazy, you know, the fact that, you know, that means more than like the number of subscribers or anything like that, just to know like he was reading it, which I didn't even realize at the time, was really cool.
That's really cool. That's just like an amazing piece of recognition that like, oh, I watch this person watches me too.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it's humbling for sure.
And you also had so much, I'm sure, to talk about the last few weeks with the Keith negotiations, just to keep in the fix.
Yeah, no, I know. I think we all were thinking it would be hard to imagine that wouldn't work out, you know. But no, absolutely glad to see he's back, and that's when you know it's like, again, I guess referencing my dad, and that's where my Mets fandom obviously started from him. But he always says jokes. He's like, you know, everyone comes out of the woodwork when baseball season comes back. So it's all these characters you kind of forget about. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, you know, here's Gary, Keith, and Ron. Here's the beat writers. You know, you're watching SNY pregame, and it's like all your friends, you know, coming back that you spend all this time with that disappeared during off season. So it's exciting knowing Keith is back.
Yeah, no, we're excited to have Keith back too on the broadcast. He's one of the best. You talked about you root for all orange teams respectively here, or blue and orange, I should say. Football though, where are you going football wise? Because I mean, there's no blue and orange in New York.
Football is Jets. Yeah, so there's the you know, it kind of makes sense if you think about it with the teams, right? But yeah, so football is Jets. And my dad's actually been a long season ticket holder for them. So, you know, we're waiting to see what happens with the quarterback situation here. And hopefully, because, you know, I think they obviously have a good young team. And if they can figure that out, we could finally have a fun season next year.
It's funny. You actually have the perfect arrangement of teams you root for, like the way it was like actually ordained and supposed to be. The Mets, the Jets, the Islanders, and the Knicks. Like this was it. This is how they envisioned it.
I do have to be honest with so we have Isles Fix, but I'm actually not an Islanders fan. I'm randomly a Toronto Maple Leafs fan.
Whoa.
Nice. Content.
So that is the one that is, like I said, we have the newsletter, but yeah, the Leafs. And it's strange because the Leafs and the Knicks have a lot of similarities. They're both like historic teams, huge fan bases, but haven't won a championship in forever. Somehow I got stuck with both. I was originally a Hartford Whaler fan because I'm from Connecticut. They moved. And when they moved, we got like the hockey package on DirecTV, and we'd watch Hockey Night in Canada. And it was like just totally different watching that. So I got into the Leafs and I went to school up there. But yeah, so technically that's the one that's kind of out in left field, to not to ruin your point about the perfect connection, but yeah.
All right, James, ask your question. I know you've been waiting for this one.
All right, Jeff. So you said your 3 favorite teams ever here. It's the Mets, it's the Jets, and the Knicks. You have, your affiliation, content creation for 2 of those 3 teams. So I have to ask, marry, kill, Mets, Jets, Knicks.
I'm going to kill the Jets.
Yeah.
I think that's the easy one. You got to marry the Mets, right? Because with Cohen, I think you feel good the long run of their success, and then that leaves the Knicks, which it makes sense because the Knicks, they are that, like, not to get too deep into question, but they are that passion drive, right? Where it's like there's nothing like when the Knicks are actually good. And the Garden is rocking, like it's hard to beat that energy. So there you go.
Yeah, they bring the heat. I mean, Citi Field's rocking for 81 games a year. The Knicks, it's a very, very small, short period of time where it's like I got to get to the Garden. No matter if they're good or bad, it's gonna be amazing.
Yeah. Although I will say, what's neat about the Mets is that and this obviously could change, but I always say the best New York teams or the best crowds are the teams on the way up. It's like when the Knicks first got Amari and they're making that run, like there was nothing like that, right? And the Mets, that's sort of where they are right now. And Citi Field is what I think, Yankee Stadium sort of used to be, where it was like a real unique place to go because of the crowd. And I feel like Citi Field has that right now because the Mets are the big market team to everyone else, and they're spending all this money to everyone else. But to Mets fans, we're still the underdog, right? So it creates, I think, that great energy, which I really like.
Today's actually just randomly the 12th anniversary of the Knicks trading for Carmelo Anthony as well, February 21st. As we're recording that when you guys are listening to it. Yeah, I know that's stupidly run social media accounts. You gotta just know the anniversaries of everything when you're running accounts for stuff. I want to pull it back to the Mets now coming into the season. Something we've liked to talk about a lot last few episodes of this show is like identifying the X factors, the difference makers. Not the Pete, not the Lindor, not the Max, not the Verlander, but the guys who are maybe a little bit off the beaten path, a little bit more under the radar from, let's say, the casual fan who's going to make a big difference. So if you had to pick the X factor for the Mets of 2023, who would be your choice?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I'll pick a player and then a group. So like the player, I think, is Vogelback. If you look at his projections, they're actually pretty optimistic. Pacoda and Zips from Fangraphs, they're actually pretty optimistic. So I think if you have him a full season in his right platoon role, and if he meets those projections, then, I think that makes a big difference in lengthening the lineup. Obviously, they'll have to figure out the other side there. But I am hopeful that if Darren Ruff can kind of carry us maybe like a month, then you can see if the young guys are ready to come up and, and do something there. I'm actually doing a piece for tomorrow morning. Ruff was talking to reporters today about, you don't always see this from a player, especially almost a year later, but he was saying he hit a lot of foul balls that could have been home runs last year.
Best foul balls in baseball.
And it's like, so I was actually going through looking up, the foul balls that he hit, and to give people an idea of the type of stuff we'll do in the newsletter. And there was a game, and I didn't remember this one when I pulled it up, but it was against the Braves, and he just missed a home run off Max Fried.
That was the Friday night where the Mets went down. I think it was Taiwan, 8-0, but in the second inning, and we brought all the way back to 8-6. And that was the one. I think he even might have either hit an RBI double that same at bat or just earlier in that game. But that was the first weekend he was on the team, and I think that was later in that game that he actually pitched and maybe that was the next week. But that was right before he pitched, messed up his neck, and yeah.
Right, exactly. And then but it was like he was 6 for like 15, 6 for 18, something like that heading into that game. He hits that foul ball. I think he had 1 hit in his next like 20 plate appearances.
Yeah.
So, it really did, turn on that. Obviously there's other factors there too. But anyways, I think that's something to watch. And then the group is the bullpen, because, I always joke with people that bullpens are like cats. Like you can't figure out what the heck they're going to do. And that's really, we know Diaz, right? Like, I think we feel pretty confident at this point that he's going to be really, really good. But, David Robertson, Brooks Raley, you bring in new guys and, they obviously have some pedigree, but you just don't know what mix is going to work. And that really makes a huge difference, right? That can change your whole season if that group comes together or not. It seems like on paper they should. But I think that's the one I would look for as sort of an X factor of, are they, truly going to be setting up this bridge to Diaz where that's now a strength? Or is that something that they're still searching for? And we're back to like we were last year where you're looking for a trade in season to make a difference.
Yeah, we're big proponents of you can never have too many arms. You can never have too much pitching. Like we love the fact that maybe this isn't necessarily directly the bullpen, but that the Mets are like 8 starting pitchers deep. And a lot of those starting pitchers, like a David Peterson or a Tyler McGill, can be used in the bullpen early on in the season if everything continues how it has, which it's such an interesting spot because as Mets fans, I feel like historically, at least in the last 20 years or so, we haven't felt comfortable with the bullpen in a very long time. And we found our guy in Diaz, like you said, and we're trying to find those other pieces to bridge them together. But realistically speaking, this should be a bullpen we are comfortable with, which is an unfamiliar feeling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, like you said, with the starter depth, last year, it's like insane when you think they won 101 games and how few wins they got from the top guys in the rotation, right? And that was because they were getting like guys like, Meagle coming through, and it's like, where do these wins even come from, right? That's something that I worry about a little bit when you're replacing, Walker and Bassett with Quintana and Senga. Like, we don't know, right? That is a pretty big question mark. And that was a lot of quality starts that you're now, trying to backfill. So we'll see, but they obviously have the depth that's there, and you always end up using it. So, I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple months we're saying, oh, they somehow need to add an arm, which seems ridiculous now, but that's just how baseball works.
Yeah, I remember when the offseason started, we did the math, and the Mets had lost 1,000 innings from the 2022 team when the second free agency began, and that's again, even with 70 from Jacob deGrom, like that was such a daunting task. And it's so comforting this front office was able to put that together in the offseason. So I think, I'm still having fun here, but I think we're probably going to get closer to wrapping this up. So maybe, Jeff, if you give us like a bold prediction or just a general record prediction of this Mets team this year, or something that's going to happen, anything fun.
I think that the fun thing that we'll be watching on the side is obviously what happens to deGrom versus what happens with Verlander, because that, that's a big one where it's like to lose the pedigree of deGrom and to think you could actually get like a significant increase this year just based on the amount he pitches. But in my bold predictions, I think we're going to hit a rough stretch. Like, I could see the Mets like having a stretch where they're 26-20, and people are wondering like what's going on here? Is there a problem? And then I'm writing in the newsletter, I always say it's more therapy to people, where it's like trying to calm everyone down. Like, it's okay. Yep. Like, it's a long season. So I guess the bold prediction is just like, and it's not really bold, but it's just people who watch baseball well enough know, like, it just because they spend all this money that everyone is obsessed about. But when you actually break down the money, and I think Tim Britton in The Athletic did a good job this morning, like, it's not like they added like Juan Soto and, all these guys. Like, they pretty much brought back the team they had, and they added an ace pitcher, right? So I could see them not reaching that 101 number, especially with the more balanced schedule. And I could see it being a little more of a struggle to get there. But I don't think by any means that, that means that they won't be successful down the road. Like, it's ironic that they won 101 last year and they lost to the Padres. They could win 89 this year, get into the playoffs, and just have a better playoff run, and this team becomes more memorable. That's just how 100%. Baseball works. But I could see that totally happening.
Yeah, and like the division's still very strong. Like you said, with the balanced schedule, it's like it's good and it's bad because it takes games away from the Braves and Phillies, and we get to play the Tigers and the Royals a little bit more, but you also get to then play the Astros a little bit and the Blue Jays and all those good teams. And their rough patch or whatever came at the end of the year last year. Like, every team has one. So I feel like you said, we've talked about it too on our podcast. Like, it's a therapy session sometimes after these games where it's like, hey, It's 162 games. Everybody loses like 60. The best team in baseball loses about 60 games a year. Like, you're going to hit those patches. It's about really how you finish, and hopefully they finish a little bit stronger than they did in the past. I had a little bit of a fun question that I wanted to ask you too before we wrap up here. Who is your favorite player on the team right now, and who's your favorite Met all time?
Favorite Met all time is a random one. It's Ray Ordonez.
Wow. Okay. I remember.
Yeah. It was growing up in Connecticut. All my friends were Red Sox, Yankee fans, and it was obviously around that time you had Jeter and Nomar.
The famous picture
I was
all their shirts off.
Yeah, exactly right. And I was the kid that was trying to make the case for Ray Ordonez on defense. So obviously he didn't, he wasn't quite what those other guys were. But it was like, I just thought, I brought up Frank Ntilikina with the Knicks. I always liked the defensive side of it, where it's just not as obvious. And but when you're watching, it's really neat to see. Like, it's just not like how smooth he was, like, making plays. And I remember going to the opening day against the Cardinals, where I guess that was his first game, I think, when he gunned down a guy from at home on a ball to left field. So Ray Ordonez was my favorite Met. The favorite current Met, that's a good question. I will say it's changed a little bit now that I write about them every day. You don't have the same, like when you're just a young kid and you're following the team and you're arguing with your buddies. But it'd probably be Diaz, just because of the path it took for him to get here. And I was one that defended him a lot when, people were coming out like, he could save 10 games in a row. And it was like, but what about in a big spot? I don't trust him in a big spot. You hear Mad Dog going off or something, right? And I was like, no, everything says this guy is good. He just had, he had sometimes he had some bad luck even on good pitches back then. But yeah, to see what he's become, and obviously it's the whole thing around him coming into the game now. It's pretty neat. So I'll say Diaz now.
I want to follow up for the Ray Ordonez. Does that also coincide with, say, like your favorite Mets teams of ever, your favorite Mets era?
Yeah, I think like for a lot of us, I'm interested in what you guys think, but like it's always tough to match those original teams you grew up watching, right? When everything was new, and you just had a different perspective on it back then. And it's actually an interesting topic I've talked to some of my friends about with this current team, where it's like, it changes when. I do think it changes a little bit when you're spending money to bring guys in. Like, the Mets did re-sign Nimmo. Diaz, he came from somewhere else, but like he's been here now for a while. So, I don't count them as being like a whole team of like hired guns. But it is a little different when you're the team with the biggest payroll versus when I first started following them, kind of more the lovable Mets. And it was like they're the complete opposite of the Yankees. And now the Yankees almost look at us like, oh, I wish we could be that. And that's a little different. So I think my favorite teams were those original, and then the Bobby Valentine years, that was like my prime time as a fan. Are you guys similar in that time frame?
I mean, that's like the first teams that we would ever remember just because of our age. Like I remember like the 2001, 2002, like Mets kind of stuff. But I think it's hard not to love that 2015 team just because as like an adult, and like being able to go to those games and experience them and like truly like have those deep memories that I'll never forget. I think that 2015 team will always have a special place in my heart.
Well, the 2015 team, the one thing about them though was remembering like that team was actually pretty bad for a big stretch of that year. Right. So, cause I remember thinking like I grew up where I was born in 83. So I missed 86. But as all Mets fans, I had that a year to remember video about the 86 team, and I would watch that. And it just seemed like, oh my God, if I was alive if I was like old enough in 86, that would be the best year. So then in 2015, when I went to the World Series, I'm like, that wasn't like 86. Like that was like, like they couldn't even score a run for like a month of that season where like
it took you a necessity of being a superhero to get to the playoffs. Like that, you talked about the lovable Mets. It's a little more of a lovable Mets team than some of the other ones.
No, that's exactly it. No.
Yeah, that team basically had like a glorified first baseman playing shortstop every single day and just finding a way to drag to the World Series. But my team, when I really think about like the team that like really guess like ignited my passion, was definitely 2006. And that team, I feel like if you had to compare, probably was a little bit more similar to the 86 team, where there was this mix of like these incredible homegrown talents, then these hired guns, and you just wall to wall kind of dominated people. And then just the differences in the finishing there. But if there was no wild card team, that team probably would have gone all the way. But that's just a difference in the rules that they set up. But that's the one, like, right, Reyes, like that's the team that always comes back Delgado. To me, like in my mind. Yeah, Delgado, Pedro getting hurt. That was Wagner. That was the one though.
It is amazing. Obviously, the final at bat there, but like if that game turns different with the catch in it, like you had the iconic moments.
Yep.
Tiger stunk.
Yeah, maybe that's the problem though. It's like it's almost so painful. Like, yeah, 2015 they lost, but you were surprised they got there.
Yes.
And then, the series was a bit quicker. 2006, I almost feel like because it's so painful, you're right. It was a fun year, but it's almost like you can't go back to it because it was painful the way it ended.
That was like the first time I threw a chair. I think when that pitch came in, I threw an ottoman, I flipped it, and I was like, I'm all in.
My first chair throw was 2007, the last game of the season, the Tom Glavine inning. That was my first chair throw, and I think I don't even remember who made the final out that game. But it might have been Cliff Floyd put the ball to the wall in 2007, or maybe it was Delgado, like right in front of those little, like those stupid little bleachers in the back of Shea Stadium, and the guy in the Marlins just caught it right there. And I just took a little rocking chair I had since I was 3 years old. I picked it up over my head, and slammed it on the ground. My parents were like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Do you see what just happened?"
Right? No, that was, yeah. So see all that stuff. We gotta. I mean, this is the thing though about being good again, right? Like they obviously had a stretch there after that run where they weren't even in contention. Well, now, the flip side of being good, it's like when you fall in love, you can get your heart broke versus if you're just dating. It's like that, we don't even know this season. We could be setting ourselves up. Who knows what's ahead of us? But you much rather be in it, I think, even if it's frustrating.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes baseball great too, is really at the end of the day, no matter how good the Mets look or how good any team looks in baseball, as cheesy and cliche as it is, you got to go out and play the games, and you got to just win. Like, I mean, we've seen some of the teams that have won. Saw the Phillies that made it. They were like mediocre for most of the year. They got hot at the right time, and they made it to the World Series. So I don't know. That's what we love about baseball, and that's also what's great about following Mets Fix is that every single day you'll be hearing what's going on with the Mets if you choose to do it that way. Give maybe one quick final shout out here to what you do over there, and try and convince people to come and join as well.
No, yeah, I appreciate it. And people can find us, just go on Twitter at Mets Fix, and you can figure out how to sign up and everything from there. But yeah, it's just a newsletter. It comes Monday to Friday by 8 a.m. We send it out. And like I said, you're going to get a rundown of everything that happened the day before, but then, really unique in-depth analysis is where we try to differentiate ourselves, I guess. So definitely come check us out. You can sign up for free, and then, there's different tiers from there. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys giving the chance to come on and talk about it and just reminisce about these. We're all excited about the new team, right? And then here we are talking Ray Ordonez in 2006, but that's all part of it, right? We carry all this stuff with us. And I think we're going to have to remind people this, especially now with the Mets, they're going to be kind of the in vogue team, I think, with the way things are going with Cohen. And we'll all be reminding all the scars that we brought with us that make it where we deserve this.
Yeah, we're not jumping on the bandwagon. We've been here.
Yeah, we're Mets fans through and through, and there's a certain chip that every Mets fan should and will continue to have on their shoulders. And we're happy as some content creators. We're going to be bringing a lot of content this year to help bring you guys to it. So, Jeff, thank you again. Everyone, please check out Mets Fix, incredible newsletter, and what a great conversation this was.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, thank you guys.